Hello, this is manic.mercurian with your birth chart reading, and as you can already probably tell, this reading will be different than other readings that I typically do. You had some specific questions in mind here, so I thought I would read your questions, and then I'm not sure exactly how long or short this reading will be. My only main intention here is just to answer your questions to the best of my ability by looking at your chart. So first, just to look at your email here, I've made sure that none of your personal information is in this email at all. But I would like to just go over these your questions here. So basically, you had three questions. Um, so you were saying you want to know more information about friendships and community. You see, you've always limited people from coming into your life due to mistrust and paranoia. So, what area or element of your life can you focus on in order to start coming out of your shell? Secondly, you want to know about your karma or purpose. You were wondering if I could speak to your karmic purpose given your ascendant in Cancer, as well as other aspects in your chart. And then lastly, you want to know if you pursue something creatively, is it possible to make that pursuit a significant part of your life? So something in the community, a hobby, something you can do for financial gain, etc. If not, is there a profession that you could intuitively be good at? So I guess I will maybe, I'll probably just type these questions and leave them in the description along with the timestamps in case you want to reference those again. But to answer your question, let me pull up your birth chart here. So, okay, so for your chart, and to answer your first question, let me pull up that email again for myself. Right, friendships, community, coming out of your shell. This I found really intriguing when I took a look at your chart because you you have a lot of contrast here. So Aries Sun, Capricorn Moon, Cancer Rising. Um, at first glance, with Sun in Aries conjunct the midheaven, this placement alone would indicate that you'd be very outgoing. This alone would indicate that you wouldn't have any trouble coming out of your shell. That you'd be very public. You know, you would be very assertive, outgoing, charismatic, energetic, warm, direct. Others would, sense your authenticity. They would feel they can connect with you very easily. They would look to you as a leader. So to me, this was very striking, contrasting your question from this placement. Even Mercury is retrograde, which tends to make a person a bit more on the introverted side. But at the same time, it's still in Aries. It's still at the top of the chart. So this too also suggests someone who is very outgoing. However, I do see placements in your chart that start to make a lot of sense with your question. So, for example, like Moon is in a totally different position than the Sun. So, because the Sun and Moon have to do with like two major components of our personality, I'd almost go so as far as to say that like each Sun and Moon are like they might take up like 40% of the personality each or something, and then the rest is just kind of these other planets, or maybe 30% each. It's a pretty large percentage though. So far you've got one side of that, the Sun, representing what looks to be a very charismatic, very outgoing, extroverted personality. On the other hand, though, the Moon, which is more the interior part of the personality, the emotions, the deep thoughts, and things like that, the Moon is in a totally different place. Sun was at the top of the sky. It was exalted when you were born. Moon is in detriment, and it had just set below the western horizon when you were born. So Sun, top of the sky, super powerful. Moon is in a much more convoluted place. Let's start with Moon in Capricorn. So Moon in Capricorn is in detriment. Typically, those that have Moon in Capricorn, and I'll come around to answer your question. This is all just context or background that I'm setting up to answer your question. But Moon in Capricorn tends to indicate a difficult childhood, a childhood where your parents were either neglecting or maybe they were just very stern or very structured. There's a lot of discipline in your childhood. You had to be very independent, basically. So it's a very usually very rough kind of not a very nurturing childhood at all. But there is a lot of strength that comes from that, because people with Moon and Capricorn, they tend to rely on themselves. They have to grow up at a young age, so they usually start taking care of themselves. Going to work at a very young age, younger than their peers. So it is a tough placement, but it tends to make a person very resilient and very self-maintaining, self-supporting, not just financially but emotionally. You don't really look to other people to solve your problems. You view it as, when you have a problem, you have to deal with it. And I think that's very admirable. I think, many of us could probably be a little bit more like that. However, a huge downside of that, or a huge challenge, struggle of that way of going about things, is that it does make you, it makes you very independent, which is great, but it can be hard for developing, relationships or friendships. You don't feel comfortable being emotionally vulnerable. For you, there's usually no need, and you get by on your own. So you don't involve other people with your struggles, with your plans or goals, with your deep thoughts. All of that you just more naturally keep to yourself. I'm sure you already know all of this. But to me, this indicates a huge reason why it would be difficult for you to open up to other people. Moon in the sixth house, just below the western horizon, this just adds to this as well. When you have placements like Moon in the sixth house, it tends to make a person more humble, modest, introverted, also more individual thinking. You may have very unusual feelings, opinions on things, which to me can be very interesting. There's a lot of richness there, but at the same time, this can make it very difficult for you to connect with others too. So the whole position of the moon is almost more different from the sun as it possibly could be. So to me, the combination of these, I know this isn't specifically what you asked about, but maybe it's relevant or helpful. The combination of both of these is very interesting. You may come across more confident and outgoing than you actually are, or something like that. Or like I said, you have major placements in your chart suggesting a really strong reputation. So maybe that's just a potential in this life, or maybe you have that and don't fully realize that. I'm not sure. This could actually be detrimental, though, in the sense that others may perceive you as being dramatically different than you actually are deep down. They may perceive you as outgoing, confident, when really you may not perceive yourself as those things. You may be, very introverted, maybe kind of shy, or definitely very private. So the combination of both those could actually pose as more of a challenge. When you have Sun and Moon squaring like you do, they're almost exactly squaring. It just means that you have a dynamic personality. There's a lot of contrast within your personality. Others will not always understand this. Others, Moon is almost as far away from the ascendant as possible as well. So this means the way you come across just doesn't match up with who you are deep down. And it's not that you're intentionally misleading people or anything like that. It's just that you just have difference or contrast between how you are deep down versus what you're projecting. So at first glance, I would say it would take someone who is very attentive, or someone who's open to such a, it will how do I put this? It'll take a certain type of person to be open to the level of dynamism that you have in your chart. With you, what you see is not what you get, and not everyone is going to be open to that. People tend to respond more positively to more simplistic personalities. When you have a very simple, straightforward personality, it's easy to understand. Others, it's just easier for others to connect with. And there's nothing wrong with being more dynamic like you are. I think it can make things much more interesting. But again, it's going to take someone who is open to that level of depth, someone who wants someone complex. You're complex, basically. That has huge benefits and it has huge downsides. It is what it is. Okay. Also, though, so that's one huge placement that helps me to understand, you feeling, um, like you want to get out of your shell, but you can't. The moon is a huge, to me, it makes a lot of sense looking at the moon. There was one other placement, though, that to me helps to understand this picture. So That would be the South Node. South Node is in 12th house Cancer. Really just briefly, South Node has to do with past life experiences, but they're experiences and themes that we've dealt with tremendously. And so they're ingrained. When we start out this life, there are ingrained and innate strengths as well as challenges that we bring from past lives, so to speak. Even if you don't believe in past lives, you could basically just say that the South Node represents things we've got right off the bat, right from childhood. So for you, for example, South Node in 12th house Cancer means 12th house Cancer would indicate like being very solitary, very sensitive, but also like very solitary, very, very private. Being in your own mind, being in your own feelings, being in your own world, kind of. And again, South Node represents kind of what you're comfortable with. It's your comfort zone, and it's where we tend to spend a lot of time, especially early in life. So this means that especially early in life, you're going to be really comfortable just being on your own, being solitary, maybe observing and learning about the world, but from a place of privacy and from a place of kind of emotion. You're not like directly as relatively, you're not as much directly, hands on going out in the world and experiencing things. You're more comfortable just kind of like laying back, observing, maybe observing the world through like technology or books. Um, you know, in other words, you're more the astronomer. You're not the astronaut. At least that's what you are innately. You're innately the astronomer, not the astronaut. So again, that in itself, it points to you can be on your own. You can handle that. You can experience the world in a kind of indirect, like ethereal, spiritual type of way, in an abstract way. This is really excellent for anything that involves detachment, or on the other hand, anything involving like observing the world in a very emotional, like sensitive, spiritual way. All of that you'd be really great at. The challenge is that, and maybe this is also why you want to get out of your shell. The challenge is the more you stay there, it's not going to be good for you. You've already done that in past lives. You've been on your own. You've experienced the world in a very indirect spiritual way in maybe multiple past lives. So doing that in this life, you're going to be really good at it. It's going to be comfortable. It's going to be familiar to you. It's not going to help you grow or evolve at all, though. And maybe you already know that. On the other hand, North Node is in sixth house Capricorn, and okay, this might lead me to something that can help answer your question. North Node more represents where you're going in this life. It's the opposite of the South Node, so it has to do with an area of your life that may not initially be comfortable. It's out of your comfort zone. It's new to you. You may not initially be good at it necessarily, but the more time you spend there, the more you involve yourself with the themes represented by your North Node, which I'm about to explain, the more it will help you grow and evolve. You'll come out of your shell and you'll embrace something new that you could potentially be very successful at. And for you, the area of your North Node is in sixth house Capricorn, very close to the descendant. So let's break this down. North Node in Capricorn, North Node in sixth house, and North Node conjunct the descendant. We can get a lot of meaning from all of these. I don't know which one to start with. North Node conjunct the descendant is pretty straightforward. The descendant has to do with other people and interpersonal relationships, one-on-one relationships, partnerships. North Node being there means, pretty much what I just said. Initially in life, you're really not going to be comfortable working with other people, relying on other people, especially like very intimate, like one-on-one conversations and dynamics will be initially very uncomfortable for you, and it might be easier to just avoid them. But like I said, that's one area that the more you can start to connect with people one-on-one, and that could be maybe beneficial if you are a bit more introverted too. If you can, uh, I don't know, take part in pastimes or occupations that involve working with people one on one or having direct conversations. It'll be initially uncomfortable, but the more you do that, it will help you to open up. It will help you grow. It'll help you evolve. It's something that your soul is kind of hungry for, even though it may not know exactly how to go about it at first. And in addition to that, North Node is in the sixth house, which has everything to do with service and helping others. Like I mentioned earlier, you have not only North Node there, but Moon in the sixth house as well as some other planets. We're not going to talk about those as much. But Moon and the North Node in the sixth house indicate that you want to help people, and servicing others. It may be a way that you can kind of break the ice with yourself, with other people. It's something that again, there's this huge potential there. It may help you to help other people. I think to some extent, most, if not all of us, like to help other people to some extent. We like to feel needed. We like to feel that we have something to contribute. You know what I mean? So yeah, that could be one area. What can you do to help others? Even if it's like getting a job of like customer service, for example, where your whole job is just to like help people all day every day. Or maybe it's not your job, maybe it's, and I know you asked about your job as well, we'll talk about that later, but maybe it's not your job, maybe it's just, I don't know, helping a friend in a routine way. Maybe there's someone in your life that you can help, you know what I mean? um, Doing so, I think, can, especially for us that maybe not very comfortable with social interactions, helping others can be a relatively easy way to do that, maybe. So maybe that's helpful. I don't know. But also, the North Node is in Capricorn, so that is a little bit different. North Node and Capricorn would indicate, and this will sound a little bit backward at first, but doing something autonomous, doing something on your own, putting yourself out there in the world through some kind of like business or project that you're running. So, and again, this is within the realm of helping people. So, like, I don't know, this makes me think of like launching your own business where you're helping other people, but you don't necessarily have to do something that big or bold to do this. I don't know, something having to do with being independent, but using that independence to help other people or service others, help others, work for others, teach others. That's what I see there. So that's one huge area of like potential growth for you. Um, Let me bring up your email again. I want to make sure I'm answering it. Friendships, community, you've limited people from your life due to mistrust and paranoia. I haven't really addressed any paranoia yet. One last thing I want to talk about, though, that just has to do with these general things that you're asking about. Saturn is in seventh house Aquarius, so that's another placement that indicates early in life you being afraid, uncomfortable, or just not enjoying, not thriving with partnerships, but also group experiences as well. This is definitely a social thing for sure. Um, Initially it's could be that, this kind of echoes a lot of the dynamics I've already brought up so far in this reading. Um, Initially, it's going to be very comfortable for you to just avoid people. You are autonomous, you're independent, so why bother involving yourself with other people? That's going to be the easy solution right off the bat. But again, over time, you will have an increasing desire and need to involve yourself with others, to work with others, to collaborate, etc. So this is just something that takes time. I know you've recently gone through your Saturn return. Saturn is now in Pisces as I'm making this video. This means that the last few years, you had your Saturn return when Saturn was crossing your, when transiting Saturn was crossing your natal Saturn placement, when Saturn was transiting through Aquarius over the last few years. A lot of these challenges may have been brought up, and I would speculate that you've actually made a lot of progress here. Maybe even asking me about these things shows the level of progress you've made or something. It could just be that you've realized these things a lot more over the last few years and are now desiring to put yourself out there. But whatever it is, this shows that although it may be initially very challenging for you to involve yourself with other people, you have a huge potential there. So I don't know if that's helpful at all. But you ask, what area or element of my life can I focus on to start coming out of my shell? I would say the biggest thing I can see is that element involving helping others, servicing others. Um, some of us want to connect with other people. We're just not sure of like what to say, or we may not be socially experienced. I think all things take practice to be good at. And if you don't grow up being very social, you just don't have that practice. It's just not as familiar or comfortable for you. So doing something that allows you to help other people, or just doing something that gives you that practice, especially being with people that you don't know well, I think that will help. um, One personal thing I could bring up, because I have dealt with social discomfort. I don't know if it's technically social anxiety, but this is one of my major themes too. I don't know if it's exactly the same for you as it is for me, probably not. um, but for me, something that's helped a lot is working in customer service. Doing so may be initially very uncomfortable for you, but they tend to be jobs that are usually low in, they don't require like a huge level of advancement from you. So in other words, even if you're a bit shy or hesitant or a bit awkward, if you're not comfortable or confident socially, so a lot of these customer service jobs you could still do. They're not, a lot of these aren't very difficult, and they would be a really great opportunity for you to get a lot of practice, helping others in a consistent way, because pushing yourself out there, and I've heard of people like riding buses and like pushing themselves to talk to strangers. That is one way. Others have had a lot of success doing that. But at least for me, the way I view it is, you know, it's going to be really awkward. It's going to be really difficult. And then you're only going to have like so many interactions with people. Even if you do it all day, how many interactions would you have with others? How much practice are you going to get? Versus if you have a job as like a cashier, for example, or a server or something else, where all day you're just constantly seeing new people, meeting people, um, helping them, serving them, things of that nature. That's something that, I don't know the details, that may or may not work with your personality or with your, where you're at. But I think it'd be something to think about, especially with your chart. But also, I would say that just in general for anyone that wants to uh, involve themselves with other people more. You specifically said, though, friendships, community, you tend to mistrust people, you have paranoia. So maybe part of it goes along with what I said. Maybe you just need that practice of, being around people, strangers, seeing that, most people, I think it can be draining being around people. We may offend each other, we may irritate each other. But I would say being around people all day, being around strangers, you tend to realize that, most people mean well. They're just trying to go about their lives just like you are. You know what I mean? So maybe just having that experience will help you to, I don't know if I'd say trust people more, but at least kind of see where people are at. See that, most people aren't out to get you. They're just trying to go about their own lives. You know what I mean? Unless you live in an area that's very twisted or something. Um, I would say that's generally the truth. So maybe that would be helpful. Otherwise, I would say it's gonna be difficult for you when it comes to like intimate relationships, because of you being so independent. And I'm not saying that it's bad to be independent. That's a great thing, but um, over time, I think, if you never truly need other people, then it's difficult to have a an intimate relationship. So I don't know if that relates to this mistrust and paranoia. And it's hard for me to tell too. I don't have a lot of context. I don't know what you mean by mistrust and paranoia. Is it just social anxiety, or is it more like surrounded by trauma from a young age? Um, like what exactly are you afraid of? Are you just afraid of coming across as awkward? Are you afraid of being embarrassed? Or are you actually like afraid that people are going to hurt you or something like that? You know what I mean? Like those are kind of questions I would have. But hopefully something I've said here helps. And if not, then definitely let me know and I can come back to this question maybe in a follow up reading, or even if I just email you back or something. Whatever the case is, hopefully my answer helps. Otherwise, let me know and we can go from there. Your second question is karma slash purpose. Can I speak to your karmic purpose given your ascendant in Cancer and other aspects in your chart? So that's another thing. Cancer rising tends to be a bit private, and there tends to be this. This is going to sound very textbook and very basic, but sometimes that answer is the true answer. Cancer rising is, they usually want to create a family for themselves. Family is very important to them. It doesn't have to literally be like a blood family, but it's important for most people that have Cancer rising to have some kind of tribe. They want to come home to people that are close to them, that they can be emotionally vulnerable around, that they can be comfortable around. This is going to be, I think, even more important for you, but potentially more difficult for you because of your moon placement. Because, like I said, you are very independent at the same time. Both can be true. You're very independent, you count on yourself, yet at the same time, family is very important to you. So that is contradicting. It is difficult to manage that kind of contrast. It's difficult when the placements line up like that in a chart, but that's just how it is. It may be more difficult for you, but it could also be more rewarding and more unique when you can achieve that kind of balance. Um, but anyway, long story short, that is a huge karmic purpose, I would say, based on your ascendant. That's like one thing that your soul craves. It's one major life mission that you have. Create a family or find a family, or like I said, it doesn't literally have to be family. It could just be whatever, whoever you live with. It could be even just you and a significant other, or you and roommates or friends that you live with that you can become very close to. Whatever it is, it's really important to have that home environment or to create it. So that, I would say, that's the biggest thing based on your ascendant. Wherever our ascendant is, it represents some kind of mission. Yeah, that's pretty much what I would say for that. Other than the ascendant, talking about karmic purposes, well, we've already talked about one huge karmic purpose. You have multiple placements in your chart that indicate a huge karmic purpose for you is learning to involve yourself with others, learning to cooperate, learning to depend on others sometimes, learning, to have intimate relationships, close relationships. That does go hand in hand with having like a family, but it also extends beyond that. This isn't just about your home life. This is about everywhere. Personal, private relationships, as well as more casual, colleagues, coworkers, whatever. I would say a huge purpose, I guess you could say, a huge mission for you is learn to build those relationships. Learn how to network, how to deal with people, how to work with people, how to meet people. Um, you have lots of placements that indicate this. Saturn in seventh house Aquarius, North Node in sixth house Capricorn, Moon in sixth house Capricorn. All of these to me indicate challenges involving. This is not going to be easy for you. This is why it's a mission. This is something that you probably lacked significantly in past lives. You just did everything on your own. You didn't involve yourself with other people. So that's why, for some reason in this life, you really want to learn a lot more about that. You want to become much more proficient in that area on a soul level. So that's one thing. So two things so far. One would be family, establishing a family and a home life, a tribe, so to speak. Second would be, second purpose would be learning, improving your abilities to form those relationships, networking, etc., ranging from private, intimate relationships to casual. And other than that, let me just kind of look around. I can't help but look again at, Sun conjunct midheaven in Aries is extremely strong. I know I already said that in the beginning of the reading, but it's there's a huge strength there. So I can't help but to bring that up again, because I can't help but to feel that that's part of a purpose as well. You wouldn't have those really strong placements if you couldn't use them in some way. Another thing is Venus in 10th house Taurus. Venus is in domicile and it's at the top of the chart. It's bringing a lot of abundance and good fortune and pleasure to your career and reputation. So these are all really strong placements when it comes to having a strong public profile, having a strong career, strong reputation, putting yourself out there, doing something big, something public. So that to me looks like a potential purpose as well. Those are the main things that I am drawn to. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So I kind of boiled it down to three purposes. And I tend to feel that that's how most of us work. We tend to have like, I would say, two to three main purposes or like kind of soul goals in this life. For more extreme examples, it could be just one or as many as like four, five, six. But for you, I would say those three are huge purposes, huge karmic purposes, as you put it, in this life. Okay, and then you said, lastly, if I pursue something creatively, is it possible to make it a significant part of my life? I would say, of course, for anyone, regardless of your astrology, you can always pursue something creatively and make it a part of your life. I think for some people, this is easier than others. Some people maybe just be extremely creative and that's all they're focused on, and it's just naturally going to become a significant part of their life. Others, it just depends on how much you want it, I think. But you said, if not, is there a profession that you could more intuitively, more naturally be good at? So, okay, so, so going back again to this same placement, you midheaven tends to have to do with career, reputation. We can glean information on what you're going to do with your career, what you're going to do with your role in society, sort of. Um, you know, Kind of like what you're touching on. For some of us, that is something that we're passionate about, and for others of us, we just have a day job, and maybe that's fine. Many of us would prefer to do our passions in our own time as hobbies. For you, though, Sun is conjunct midheaven, so this means that Sun again has to do with your identity. It's conjunct midheaven. So in other words, like the placement indicating your career and reputation, it's in the same exact spot as the placement indicating your identity and your ego. So that to me suggests that you would be someone who would do something that you're truly passionate about as your career. Or in other words, whatever your occupation is, whatever your role in society is, your identity in society, it's coupled with your identity in life in general. Most people don't have that. Most people have, you could say, like two identities. I view myself one way in general, but then I'm a certain way when it comes to work and career. You aren't like that. Yeah, you're, I don't know how else to put that. The fact that Sun and Midheaven are coupled to me suggests that it won't be good enough for you to just have a day job, that you really do want to do something that you can put your heart and soul, um, something you can be passionate about for work. I don't know what that would be, though. I don't know if you're asking that, but to answer your question, though, I do think, well, first off, like I said, anyone can, I think, can pursue something creatively. um, for your profession, but specifically for you, I do think you would be more likely than perhaps the average person to to turn your passion into your work or profession. You didn't explicitly ask that, so that's kind of the way I'm interpreting the question. Hopefully, that's what you meant. But yeah, that placement definitely, to me, indicates that. Also, just the fact that you do have your other planets like Mercury and Venus are at the top of the chart, so that indicates a lot of your soul, your mind, what you value, what you enjoy. All of that is intimately coupled with your career and reputation. So like I said, I don't know what you're interested in. I don't know what you would want to do creatively. But whatever it is, if you want to be an artist, musician, whatever it is, I don't know. I do think your chart indicates that it would be very likely you would, that would be your main identity, your main career. Whether you make money out of that or not is up to you, but it does look like that would be your main, like what you're projecting out into society has to do with what you truly are deep down. And that in itself is very powerful. It will make others notice you. It's actually common with celebrities to have placements like that. So again, though, it's just really interesting contrast between that whole dynamic and your cluster of positions in sixth house Capricorn. So So you have both. You have this very private side to your nature, very guarded, but then you've also got the side that's like directly channeling out into the public, into the world. So that does sound really difficult, very difficult to manage, but at the same time, it can be very powerful because um, in order to have a really strong presence, really strong public life, I think it's beneficial to us to know to have a certain level of privacy as well. And I think for that reason, many people with the most private, some of the most private placements, like for example, placements in Scorpio or Capricorn, they tend to be really great celebrities, politicians, etc., because they naturally know what to keep private and what to project publicly. Okay, so basically, my point is yes, that is difficult that you have these two different sides of your chart, two different sides of your being, but at the same time, there's huge potential there um, to do something really powerful. Okay, so that's pretty much what I'd say. Your last question, my shortest answer would just be yes. You said, if not, is there a profession that I could intuitively be good at? Honestly, I don't want to sound cheesy and, like I said, some people don't pursue their passions as their main career or reputation, and that's fine. I think many, if not maybe even most of us, don't necessarily do that. But for you though, I do. Yeah, I, 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 I couldn't imagine telling you to do something that's not something that you're truly passionate about for your work. I do think your chart suggests that. Okay, so that's my answer for your questions. I hope this helps. I didn't realize till I started the reading that some of your questions I could kind of interpret different ways. So I hope that I answered your questions in a way that was helpful. But yeah, let me know. Let me know any. I always say any feedback or questions you have, I'm definitely open to. And if you have any questions, if you wanted to know anything else, like I said, we can continue emailing, or I could always do, I've done follow up videos as well if there was something that you really wanted me to expand on. But yeah, thanks for this opportunity to do this reading for you, and I hope that helps or was at least interesting. Have a good day.